したい人で読み直しているで読み直しているだけがで読み直しているで読み直しているで読み直しているで読み直しているで読み直しているでキスしたい人で読み直しているで読み直しているだけがで読み直しているで読み直している
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our first virtual live streaming workshop hosted by Leuko Sports Strapping. I'm Rully Potgieter, and I will be representing the brand Leuko Sports Strapping. And let's start off. Who is Leuko Sports Strapping? We are proudly manufacturer of products for rehab and preventative injuries. We actually currently supplying a lot of sporting coats, and we've partnered up with the greatest teams around the country, such as your Springboks, Bulls, Lions, all the rugby unions, as well as a lot of the other teams as well. If you want to find out more around Leuko Sports, please go to our Facebook or Instagram page, Leuko Sports. We will gladly to assist you in any questions that you have. If we look at the workshop that we have tonight, we want to have it really as much as interactive as we can. So please put your questions into the chat box, and we will gladly to answer your questions throughout the evening. We will have at the end of the strapping course, we'll have the strapping guide for you to download, and you will have all the techniques by your hand as well. This brings me to the introduction of our speaker this evening, Nico Grobler. Nico Grobler has been doing this for us for the last 7 years. And he's a biokineticist by trade and has got his own practice in Groenkloof, Pretoria. He's got some great accolades working with great high-performance athletes. Some of them are the 2012 Olympic medalist in the rowing, and currently the 100-meter up-and-coming hurdlers that represented South Africa in Paris, Marionnay Fourie. Nico also has got great experience in rugby, schools, clubs, and some of the unions. But also he did his master's degree presentation in front of the whole International Olympic Committee Congress in Monaco in May. So Nico, we want to say thank you for giving your time up to educate all of us on strapping. I know we're going to learn a lot again tonight with you, and yeah, good luck, and guys, enjoy the strapping course.
Thank you guys for joining us, and thank you again for Leuko for hosting this evening. As Ruli said, we're going to try to make it as interactive as possible, so if you have any questions or comments, please leave it in the chat box. We'll get to them as we go, especially when we do the strapping techniques. We will try to answer the questions as we finish each technique. If you have any specific questions, just leave them there. So firstly, we will be starting off with the role of strapping and taping. So the role is to support ligaments and capsules on an unstable joint, support injuries by compressing and limiting movement. It also helps to increase the proprioception around the joint. The proprioception is, as soon as we strap, we compress the joint, and this enhances the proprioception by signaling the brain that there's either injury or we're trying to protect this joint or structure, and this just enhances the activity around the joint. It also helps in a less strapping technique, but less strapping way, but to secure protective pads or dressings or splints if there's any other types of injuries such as bone breaks or wound dressings or anything like that. Then also the goals of treatment is to minimize the risk of injuries and to maximize the chances of recovery, and also to maintain sports and health fitness. When we look at the products, there's quite a vast array of products that Leuko Sports offers. Each have different functions, not all the same functions, so the different taping is quite important, specifically when you do certain strapping techniques. Certain strapping techniques require, like for instance the Leuko Tape K, you only use it for certain techniques, or for support or stability. There's different techniques or different products that you need. When you look at your strapping portfolio, there's quite a lot of type of brands that we use, such as your non-adhesive brands. These are normally used for compression, so it's your Leuko Band S. These are normally used for compression around the joint when there's swelling, or provide just in general compression around the joint. There's no supportive structure, won't prevent an injury from happening. This is really just to help support an injury or to get rid of any swelling around the joint. Then you've got your adhesive brand. These are normally your Leuko Band, the EABs, your elastic adhesive bandages, or your rigid strapping. These are normally used in all sports settings. Then you have your co-adhesive bandages. These bandages are the same as the non-adhesive ones. It also provides compression around the joint. But the nice added function of this one is it sticks to itself, so you don't need extra pins or any other strapping to fasten these strapping. They stick to itself. So it's quite a nice function that they have in the strapping, and also helps again to prevent from swelling. In certain instances, you can have more of a supportive function around the joint, especially because of the restrictive nature of this strapping. And then you have your tubular bandages. These are normally for also for lymph drainage or for compression, especially after surgeries where you need lymph drainage or compression around a whole structure for, let's say, a whole leg or a whole arm. These are normally where we'll use these bandages. Then we look again in your strapping portfolio, the rigid strapping versus the elastic adhesive bandages. I think if you work the strapping or work the sport, you've seen them quite regularly. Specifically your rigid strapping, these are used to restrict movement. So this is your Leuko Tape P or your sports tape. These restrict movements and prevents injuries from reoccurring. Then you have your EABs, so they come in different sizes, 25, 50 mil, 75 and 100 millimeter size, and they more in supportive function, but also helps to prevent injuries. So these strapping products are normally used either together or can be used separately when doing certain techniques. Specifically looking at the elastic adhesive bandages, like I said, we've got different sizes. You've got your 25, which is more for finger taping, or smaller joints, your 50 mil, which we basically one of your number one brands in your or strapping in your bag. It's normally for ankles or for smaller joints such as elbows and smaller people. This you use quite often. Then you have your 75, which are bigger structures for knees and shoulders. And then your 100 millimeters are also, this is more used for compression, so that's a whole quad or whole hamstring that we'll strap with that. So that's normally what we'll use the 100 for. It's more for supportive of nature, and it also helps to support structure and prevent injuries from reoccurring. When we strap this, we normally do this before an event. We normally do it in our rugby setting, let's say 2 hours before the time. Just allows you time to strap, and then normally when you take this off, normally immediately after event. The reason why we take it off, because it straps moisture underneath the strapping, and this can sometimes cause cause blisters around the joint. And once you have blisters, or when you take the strapping off and you creates blisters, it can actually rip the skin. And then there's one of the contraindications of strapping. You're not allowed to strap over bare skin, so then you have to cover that strapping, and if you repeatedly do that, you can cause more damage to your skin. So it's important to remember to take this off immediately. Also it's a nice function, but also sometimes people's worst nightmare when it comes to taking off the bandages. Normally take this off immediately after an event. The reason why is the Leuko sports tape, the glue reacts to heat. So if you normally the go-to one is to take the strapping off in the bath. So the heat from the warm water or the shower actually reactivates the glue. So this causes the plaster to stick even more. So the salt and sweat, the salt and the sweat from an event actually decreases the stickiness of the bandage. So the best time to take it off is actually straight after an event. Let's say with the elastic adhesive bandage, there's different types. So you have your Leuko Band S and your sports tape. They come in different sizes. And you see them quite often. And then a nice new product they have, the Lightcast Pro. This is exactly the same properties as your normal EABs. However, it is a tearable EAB, so which is quite nice for sporting events. If you have to quickly strap in a joint, there's no scissors or anything required. It's exactly the same elastic properties, same adhesive properties. So it's actually a quick use after if you need to quickly strap, specifically in a rugby event. We only have a few minutes to strap quickly on the ankle, so you can use this one. So it's quite a nice product to have in your bag. Then when it comes to the rigid taping, rigid taping is to restrict movement around a joint. We don't normally use this one alone. You normally use the EAB as your anchor straps with this. The reason why is because it's such a restrictive taping and there's no elastic properties in this bandage. So if you just put this onto bare skin, the chances that it will rip the skin or just pull off is quite high. So we normally use the EAB in conjunction with this one as an anchor strap. So you'll strap onto that. We'll show you that a bit later on when we do the strapping techniques. But it's very restrictive, restricts movement. There's no elastic properties in this, so it really prevents any movement from happening when we strap. Then you have two types when we come to the rigid type. It's the Leuko sports tape and the Leuko Tape P. So Leuko Tape P is more the premium brand of the two, but this one we normally use in conjunction with Fliximol in your combi packs. So this we use to do the McConnell techniques or to change biomechanics. So with McConnell techniques, you normally change biomechanics. And this change of biomechanics, because you apply so much tension, you normally use a Fliximol with it. Otherwise, it'll put too much strain onto the skin. But both are equal in strength. The Leuko Tape P has a slight more stronger glue, but in general, these both are quite similar, and they both are non-elastic. So for any prevention of any injuries or movement around a joint, this is the go-to one to use. And then you also have your Kinesio tape or Leuko Tape K. They come in various colors and various sizes, so from a 25 up until 100, and they come in various colors from blue, black, red, and pink. So it's different colors and different sizes that we can use. The Kinesio tape is quite popular. I think if you watch any sporting event these days, you see them quite all over. It's not just a fashion statement, it actually does provide a function. This type of trapping is not for support around a joint, but more therapeutic of nature. It helps facilitate muscle movement around a joint. So if we use this, it helps to enhance the function around a muscle, or if there's swelling or any contusions around the joint, it helps with lymphatic drainage. So it actually, if you can see, it actually removes some of the fluid around that joint. The The reason why it's such an effective taping, so if you look at the Leuko Tape K, you can actually see it's got a wave pattern at the back, and this contour conforms with the skin. So if you apply gentle tension to the strapping, it actually flattens out the wavy pattern in the strapping, and as you apply it, you obviously release it, and the tension it recoils, and those wave patterns return. What that does is you'll see it lifts up the skin. So if there's an injury to a muscle or to a joint, there's normally fluid into that space. So normally your joints have a certain amount of fluid that it can take. So if it exceeds that limit, it closes the cells. That helps with normal drainage, and it actually restricts movement because the muscle is now trapped within that fluid. So with the Leuko Tape K, as it lifts the skin, it actually creates more space. And this space opens up the cells, and it also allows normal movement. So you can actually have drainage, the cells are open so that drainage can occur, and then also normal muscle movement can occur around the joint. The strapping is quite popular. It's been around since the Seoul Olympics. It was developed by Dr. Kenzo Kei, so it's been quite popular and quite a long time it's been around. So you can see there's a lot of research around this, the strapping, so it does really work. Then there's also various other products that we tend to use, especially the Tenzo spray. It's a glue spray, so normally the glue spray, we would, if the guy is very sweaty or a very hairy person, we will add an extra layer of glue to the skin. So this is quite a nice product to have in your bag. Then you also have the glue remover. So if you use the Tenzo spray, you get the glue remover. It just helps to take off the strapping. And then you have your underwrap or your Fliximol. So the underwrap and the Fliximol we normally use if a person is very allergic to plaster. So you can use the underwrap as your base layer, and then we would strap over that, or with certain specialty techniques like the McConnell taping, we will use the Fliximol as your base layer, and then apply the Leuko Tape P over that with quite a hard tension, and that doesn't affect the skin as much. Otherwise, if you don't have that, it affects quite the skin. So that's quite also a nice one if you're allergic to plaster. And it's quite important to know if your players or athletes are allergic to plaster, because it does cause blisters and skin rash, and we can't strap over that. So to prevent that, definitely look at the Fliximol or the underwrap. Then we will actually go into the taping techniques. We'll go through the rules of strapping as we do the taping techniques, but we're going to start with the ankle strapping. So the first technique that we're going to do is the figure of 8 from the ankle. So for this technique, you would use either the Co-Plus. So that's quite a nice bandage to have. If let's say this technique is quite nice for if you have swelling around the ankle, the figure of 8 technique helps to get rid of that swelling, and it's also a nice compressive feeling around the joint. So again, enhancing the proprioception around the joint, and then also telling the body, look, there's an injury, we need to either enhance the activity around or enhance the activity there, just to help protect the joint. So you can see this is quite an elastic bandage, quite a lot of play in it, and then the nice part is it sticks to itself. So you don't need any extra strapping or pins to hold this in place. You can just apply it and reapply it. So just be careful when you use it, because it sticks to itself. If you crumple the strapping like this, you'll see it's quite hard to take off. So just be careful when you use this. Take care when you use it, and take it off, just to make sure that it doesn't stick to itself, because then it's a bit of a nightmare to take it off. So just make sure that it's there. So we either use, for the figure of 8, we'll either use the Co-Plus, or you would use your 50 mil EAB strapping. So it's nice, as you can see, it's a normal EAB. It's got a slight bit of stretch into it. It just allows for a little bit of stretch when you strap it, but you can see in general it doesn't move much. So it creates that nice compressive feeling, and it helps to compress around the joint. So and then it will help to prevent injuries. So this is the technique we will use. It's almost your go-to technique when it comes to ankle strapping. There's various other techniques we'll show you a bit later, but this is the basic technique that we will use. So when you use the strapping, always be careful. Do not touch the glue on the inside the whole time, because you have sweat and salt on your skin. It just deactivates the glue. So the more you touch the glue, the less active it gets. When you hold your roll, when you strap, we always say hold it in the uppermost. So it's like that. If you like a toilet roll, in that position. Because if you have it underneath, the glue part's sticking outwards, or if you have it the wrong way around, it's either in your hand the whole time and you're going to touch the glue. So we normally say in the uppermost position, in that position, and it just rolls off easier when you apply it like that. When you apply it, don't take it off, roll it back on like this. The glue just gets less active, and you want the plaster to be as active as possible. When you're going to strap, always use make sure that your environment that you're strapping at is comfortable, because you are ultimately the strapper for, let's say, if you're doing a sporting event, you have to be there the whole day. So if you've got a bad environment that you're strapping at, it can cause you an injury. So, and then you are the most vital part of that day. So we don't want an injury to you. So if you have a bed, a portable plinth, or a stationary plinth that you can have around your working station, is quite nice, because the players can just have a seat on the bed and you can move around them, or they can stand on the bed and you can move around them and strap. Always make sure that you have you have the bed, you have well, if you're using a chair, use a chair close by, and then just use this as your strapping technique. So we're going to start with the figure of 8 strapping technique. Okay. So for this one, I'm going to use the 50mm EAB. So when you have your patient, always ask them to sit legs straight and toes pulled up. So the reason why we do this is if you have an injury, most of the injuries to an ankle occurs to the outside structure of the joint. So if we have it in a relaxed position, so toes pointing down, you've got 3 ligaments. So 3 ligaments sitting, so one's there, and one is at the side. This ligament will be relaxed. So we normally say we want to strap the joint in a shortened position. So it's one of the guidelines or rules of strapping. You always strap the joint in the shortened position, because that's where it's safe and it's more comfortable. And if you strap it in the lengthened position, let's say you've got an injury to this structure, you're actually applying more tension to that ligament. So if we shorten it, it's more relaxed and it's a more safe position that we want to strap this ligament in. So we normally have it in the shortened position. That's why we ask them to pull their toes up. If they have quite tight calves or struggling to keep this in this position, just ask them, just grab a towel or an elastic band or anything and wrap it around their foot, and they just hold that towel or bandage in place, and that'll just help it to be in that position. Okay, so again, like I said, when we start with the strapping, roll in the uppermost. If you have a pair of scissors, it's always good to invest in a pair of strapping scissors. It's different to your normal household scissors. Reason for that, it's got a flat edge on top, so if you cut, well, you can still cut someone, but there's no sharp edges that will stick into the skin if I actually touch the skin. So there's no sharp edges, so invest in a pair of strapping scissors. It's always a good investment to have. Okay, cool. So when we start with the strapping, we always have the joint pulled up. Always check that the skin is clean. If it's not clean, well, just ask them to clean it with warm water and soap. Again, because your body's got natural oils and salt on it, and that can affect the stickiness of the strapping. Also, make sure if it's quite a hairy person, you can always ask them to remove the hair. So I won't do it today, but it is uncomfortable to strap over hair, and then also the strapping doesn't stick to hair. So if it's quite a hairy person, ask them to shave before, or just shave that section that you're going to use. It's just easier, and also it's nicer to take off. Okay, so when we start with the figure of 8, we always start with toes pulled up. So the first movement that we will do is, oh my goodness. So it's just an important structure to remember when you strap. So just remember, when you do this strapping technique, on your foot there's a little bone. We call it the base of the 5th metatarsal. So it's right on that section there. Be careful when you apply tension to that end. It's quite a big nerve ending there. So if you apply too much tension around that area, it can actually cause the feet to go a bit numb or your toes to go a bit dead. So when you go over that section, just go gently over that or just go below that to avoid that structure in there. So otherwise it can cause a bit of, you'll strap it, and once you're done, you can actually, you've done the whole strapping and everything is fine, and then you have to redo the strapping because the foot is actually numb. So it's always a good thing just to be cautious of that little structure. Okay, so when we go to the strapping, we will, so the first part is you start on the base of the foot. So just start with a little gentle strap just around the foot, just the base to start off with. Always remember, when we strap, we want to do even overlaps, meaning, so you'll see on the EAB it's got a little yellow line in the middle, so that means it's the 50% line of the strapping. So when we strap, we want to always cover 50% of the strapping. Strapping loves itself, and you're building an anchor, so the more you cover the plaster, the stronger the strapping will be, and the more the less strapping you use, so that's always a good economical thing, and the stronger the strapping will be. Okay, so we'll go once over the foot. So once we're over there, so your next movement will be, we're going to aim sort of 45 degrees up, moving to the outside. So what you're doing on the outside, you'll do on the inside. So we're going to go around, so around the back of the Achilles, come around the foot. So then I'm aiming again down to cover my 50% line. So as I go over the 50% line, I'm just keep following that pattern, and I'm following a figure of 8 movement. So from there, following on that 50% line, covering the cross, going over 50%, going over the 50% line, coming around the Achilles, again covering 50% as we go there. Just keep following that pattern, and you're just creating a little figure of 8 pattern around, and you're going to keep doing this pattern until you are sort of at the back end of the foot. So just keep following that pattern, and just keep following that 50% line. Okay, so I think that'll be enough. So you just keep following there. Once we get to the top, we'll just finish it off, just go once around, and then just finish on the top. Okay, and then obviously just cut that little section off. Okay, just make sure it's nice and neat. I always like to compress the strapping when I'm done, just to make sure everything is sticking nice and tight of it. And then I'm also checking for any wrinkles, especially when it comes to feet. Check for any wrinkles around the strapping, especially here, because it can cause a blister, it can cause friction, and then that friction causes blisters. And especially around the feet, because there's a lot of movement, there's socks, there's a lot of stuff happening here. Feet tend to sweat a bit more, so that can cause a bit of slippage, and then it causes blisters around the joints. And when you take it off, those chances you'll take the skin off is quite high, so quite be careful of that. Check for the blisters, and then when you're done, is always ask the player or whoever you're strapping, how does it feel? Is it too tight? Is it too loose? Check for circulation. So to check circulation, you'll just press on the nail bed and see if there's refilling of the blood. If there's nothing, you'll see it immediately. It just stays white. But if there's a normal blood return, it shows you the strapping is not too tight. If it's too tight, we'll have to unfortunately take it off. Otherwise, it's fine like that, just to keep it in that movement. So that is the figure of 8 strapping technique. Cool. So then the next strapping technique that we'll go through is the lateral stabilizers and the figure of 6. Okay. So your figure of 8 is a basic strapping technique. So if it's a very light injury that you just need support, a bit of comfort around the joint, you can use the figure of 8 technique. But if there's more severe injury to an ankle, we would start off firstly with lateral stabilizers and the figure of 6. It creates exactly what it does. It creates lateral stability. The lateral stability acts like ligaments, and then your figure of 6 actually creates more support around the joint. So we're going to do it on the other side. So when we start with this, for this one we'll use again your 50mm EAB, and then your sports tape strapping. You'll see when you take this one out, there's always a little wax paper that comes with it. Keep that paper with you. The wax paper actually just takes the moisture out of the strapping. It's quite important just to keep that moisture out, otherwise it gets very sticky, or the moisture will just makes the strapping less stickier. So we will use your rigid strapping. So like I said here previously, there's no give in this strapping. There's no elastic properties, and this is quite a hard strapping. You can see if I pull on it, there's no give to this strapping. So this is where we sort of restrict movement with the strapping. The nice part of this is it's a tearable strapping. So if you've had practice with this, you can actually just tear the strapping off quite easily. So it's quite a nice to have. Otherwise, if you struggle with that, use a pair of scissors just to cut that off. Otherwise, it'll also sometimes if you do it incorrectly, it'll also just fold onto itself, and then it's like this, and then it's a bit of a nightmare to get off. So just make sure that you just take that care of that one. Okay. So when we do the lateral stabilizers, we always start with the anchor point. So the anchor point is where all your rigid strapping is going to attach to. So this is quite important. Like I said to you, the strapping loves itself. So the more you can strap it to itself, the better and stronger it will be. But because this is no movement in it, it can actually cause a bit of harm to the skin. So we always use the 50mm EAB as an anchor point where we start, all the end points come together. So when we do the lateral stabilizers, we tend to do the base, or the anchor point will normally be between 4 to 3 fingers above the ankle joint. So depending on size of your hand also, and then the size of the person you're strapping, we would go either 3 fingers or 4 fingers above the joint line. So, and again, remember, toes pulled up, because we want to do it in the shortened position. You'll see if it's in that position, you can see how the joint is opening there. So if I apply a stabilizer in that position, there's no support to that structure. The structure is actually open. So we want to close that structure to provide enough support as possible. Okay, so we'll start with 4 fingers above the joint line. This is just a loose strap. Don't go too hard on the strapping. And what I tend to like is also just start with in the middle and on top of the shin, and then finish on top of the shin. Because all your stabilizers are coming on the side here, it can actually pull off. If you have your end point or your start point on the side there, it can actually sometimes just take that end point, and that's going to take the whole strapping off. So I tend to like just to start in the middle there. So it's about 4 fingers above there. So just a loose strap, doesn't have, just once around, and then just cut that piece off. Okay, and just make sure everything is nice and tight. Okay, so when we apply the lateral stabilizers, it's going to be a stabilizer that sits on the side like this. So what you do is always measure out. So there's various ways where you can start in that position and just work your way around. What I tend to like is I measure out my whole piece. So I would have it the glue side facing me, and then just measure out the section like that. So you want to have a little bit of overlap on the sides, like that, and just have a little overlap. You'll see now why we do that, that little overlap. So that's more or less the length that I'd like. Oops. This tends to happen quite a lot, so be careful when you use it. Okay, so then hold the end points, just gently hold the end points, and now glue side facing towards the ankle. When you apply it, we want to start just behind the malleolus or the ankle joint there. So I normally start at the bottom of the foot, and then I would just apply tension, and then stick the end points, make sure that they stuck, and then I just rub onto the strapping, making sure everything is nice and tight. Again, why we rub it is because the glue reacts to heat. So the more I can rub it, the more heat I create or friction I create, and that creates heat. Then for the lateral stabilizers, we normally do 3 to 4, depending on the size of the joint. So it depends on also on the severity of the injury. So the more you add, the more support it gives you. And then again, remember, we want to do 50% overlap. So when we do it, the next one must be 50% from the previous one. So we'll do 3 for this case. So again, measure out your length. You can cut or tear. Okay, at the base of the foot, more or less 50%, and then just apply a tension there, and just rub again. Making sure again there's no creases or crinkles at the bottom, because remember this is going to cause friction. So just be careful when you use it. Okay, one more. Okay, again remember 50% in the middle, apply tension, and then just pull upwards. Okay, so you can see, so just on this, your foot, so it already applies a little bit of tension, specifically on this structure. So if you try to pull the foot in, you can see how much tension is creating on the strapping. So it already applies a bit of lateral stability and then medial stability on the inside to the foot. So it already provides quite a bit of support to an ankle. So the next technique will be your figure of 6. So it's exactly like we say, we're going to create a figure of 6 technique. We always do this one to the outside. You can in some instances do it on the inside as well, depending again on the severity of the injury. Remember, the more you strap, just the more compressive is, the more support you provide. But normally we want to just protect the outside, and remember we want to close that joint. So the figure of 6 actually helps that by closing that part of the foot. Okay, so for the figure of 6, again you'll use your sports tape, the rigid strapping. For this one, we're going to start on the inside of the foot. So you'll see you apply, it depends on how high you want to start. I normally start about halfway up on the inside, a bit more to the back of the heel, a foot, and then we're going to go around. So I'm using, I'm not tearing it now, so I'm going to tear at the end or cut at the end. When we do this, you can see we're going to make a turn. So it's important to remember, do not use the limb as an anchor, because if I pull hard on the foot, you can see I can actually change the way the foot's position is. And we don't want that to happen, because now, let's say I change it into a complete different position and I strap it in the wrong position. If he has to play 80 minutes or 90 minutes in that position, it can actually cause more harm than that good. So always use the roll and measure out how far you want to go, and support the side that you're pulling on just in that position, just to prevent from pulling on the limb as an anchor. So slowly use that section. So we will start, so in that position, just at a slight angle, change the angle a little bit. So you're going to come around in that position. Then from this position, we are aiming for the inside of the leg. So we're going to come around and then pull nice and tight. I'm using not the limb as an anchor, I'm using the roll. Come around that structure and aim for the inside of the leg. In that position, just tear and then make sure everything is nice and tight. It's nice and solid. So you can see now it's protecting that inside, the first ligament on this side. If you turn the foot in, you can see how much tension the strapping is actually creating. So it's providing quite a nice bit of support. I normally do about 2 to 3 of them, again, depending on the size or the severity of the injury. So again, in the inside of the foot, make sure there's no creases. Keep holding the strapping and then just apply as you go. Pull to the inside, that position, tear, and there we go. So you can see it creates a little figure of 6 pattern. So then this will be so you have your lateral stabilizers and then you have your figure of 6. So to finish this off, what we do is you have your end point sticking over there. So you'll take your 50mm EAB, start at the beginning, then wrap around. So now we'll just wrap around once. You'll pull these anchor points down. Sorry, you can see here is not nice if it's on there. You pull these anchor points down on both sides. And then we're just going to cover those anchor points, and now it's really securing the strapping in place. So these lateral stabilizers in the figure of 6 won't come loose, and now we know they're nice and secure. So depending on again on the severity, you can stop there, or you can add an extra layer of protection in form of the heel lock. So the heel lock does exactly what it says. It actually locks the heel in place. For this technique, you can use the rigid strapping, the sports tape, but mostly we prefer to use the 50mm EAB to do the strapping. Reason why, there's quite a lot of twists and turns, and it can create a bit of a very constrictive feeling around the joint. So if a player doesn't like the strapping to be too tight, you can normally, the 50 EAB is perfect to do this technique. The heel lock also, like it says, it creates a lock around the heel, so it creates almost like a diamond pattern on each side, so it really locks the heel into place. So that with your stabilizers and your figure of 6 really completely locks, supports and locks the heel into place. Okay, so when we do the heel lock, again we'll take our 50mm EAB. We start at a slight angle, angling down. Again, be careful, there's the joint line, joint structure we don't want to touch. So a slight, almost like a 45, 35 degree angle downwards, aiming for the back of the heel and so we're going to go with the back of the heel and then around the Achilles. So what you're doing on the outside, we'll do exactly repeat on the inside. So easy to remember when you start, so start up top, and then we're going to go underneath the foot. We're going to go around the Achilles and then over the foot again. So you'll see it starts creating our little triangle. Again, same on the inside. We're going to go underneath the foot, around the Achilles. Now it's completing the diamond pattern or the triangle pattern, and then around the Achilles, over the foot. So you can normally stop with one. It creates already nice support. Or again, if it's a bad ankle, we normally do 2 of them. So we'll just do another one. Again, doing 50% overlap. So again, over the 50%. So we're going to go underneath the foot, around the Achilles, over the foot. Remember, when you go around the Achilles, pull nice and tight so that it's nice and supportive. And then again, go underneath the foot, the back here, around the Achilles, and over the top. If you would like to cover the whole foot, you can now just continue with your figure of 8 pattern, or you can just stop there, and then that's the ankle strapping. So that's the ankle there. So that is your heel lock. So again, depending on what injury you have, you can just do the figure of 8 pattern, or you can just do the lateral stabilizers with a figure of 6. And if it's very bad, you just add the heel lock, or you can do everything. So it really depends on the preference of your player. Also the type of injury. If you had a mild grade 1 strain of an ankle ligament, maybe just a figure of 8 will be good. But if you really want stability, I would definitely go with the rigid strapping, because again, remember, it limits movement around the joint, and then it creates quite a stable structure. So what I normally do if it's a very bad ankle, I would do the lateral stabilizers with my figure of 6 and my heel lock. If I want to, I'll just finish off with a figure of 8 just to cover everything, but it's not necessary to finish off with the figure of 8. But if I see it's less, I'll just do maybe just the heel lock with a figure of 8, or just lateral stabilizers with a figure of 6. Normally the lateral stabilizers and the figure of 6 go together, and then the heel lock and the figure of 8 can go together, or you can use them all in conjunction. So I think it's time, if there's any questions that we can answer regarding the strapping, if you want me to show you any techniques or other techniques around the ankle, yeah, please leave the comments.
Yeah, Miku, we've got a few. The first one will be Alex Christians. Do you always stop at the end of the heel? He's referring to the figure of 8, or can you stop anywhere?
So you want to stop to the end of the heel, because you want to completely close the whole foot. So you don't have to go all the way to the back, but I normally go as close as possible to the back, because then the more surface area we cover, the more stable that joint is. And sometimes the swelling, if you're using the Coplus for swelling, the swelling manifests more to the back, or it can move to the back. So you're actually really covering the whole section of the foot. So it just provides a more stable structure. So I would prefer to go all the way back, or as far back as you can, with the figure of 8.
Then the next one, Renee Clarence Sparks. When you apply strapping for runners or walkers, is there a higher risk of blisters? Should they insist on running or walking?
Well, no. So we do apply strapping so it depends also distance-wise, but we have applied to people that run comrades. I've applied the heel lock to their ankle. I think when you do it, just be very careful. When you apply it, take care of not creating wrinkles. If they're very prone to strapping, maybe use an under wrap over that. Or sometimes what also helps is if you can strap over the shoe. You can do the same technique just over the shoe, so it's nothing on their skin, but it actually provides, we sometimes do that with the rugby players. We just strap over the tocs. It still provides the same stability, but you can definitely strap for a runner. If it's so severe that I will also, it depends on the severity of the injury. If it's a very severe injury, then they should probably not run. If they're coming back from an injury, start off with walking with the strapping and see how the ankle responds, and then they can slowly start running. But if they're not very comfortable with it, then maybe see if you play around with certain different techniques, if that provides them more support around the ankle.
I think the last question on the ankle, Steve Mintua. Between the figure of 6 and figure of 8, which is the best suited for injury prevention after a Lisfranc fracture?
Sure, that's a nice complex one. To finish it off, I would, it depends on how much stability, but the figure of 8 will provide, I would do both for the beginning and see how they respond. If it's too much on their foot, then I'll just change it a little bit. But you can start with figure. I would do both. I would do more the figure of 8 because it just provides that compressive feeling, especially around the fractures. There's no real instability, so I wouldn't do. You don't have to really use the rigid strapping. I would maybe use just the figure of 8 and the heel lock. Because it just provides that compressive feeling and it supports the joint rather than restricts the joint in terms of strapping wise. Is that all the questions? If there's more questions, please leave them in the comments, then we can get to them afterwards. Yeah, so with feet, and especially with runners, be careful with look, sock management is also very important in terms of running. If you strap them as well, maybe check that they don't wear too thick socks or thicker socks just to prevent the blisters from happening, especially with their strapping around because there's more stuff moving. But you can, yeah, so we'll see, we can go through that. Then the next strapping we'll go to, so if there's any knee related questions, we'll go through the knee. We're going to start with a partial knee strapping. This is more for stability wise, so if you have medial ligaments or lateral ligaments or ACL ligament tear, we'll normally use, we can do this strapping, and then we'll also include kinesio taping as well for the hamstring injuries as well, because that's normally one that we can use specifically for the kinesio tape. So with regards to the knee, yeah, so we just want to get our model on top of the bed. Okay, so with regards to the knee, you'll use 75 75mm EAB, just because it's a bigger structure, and we will also use our sports tape. Depending on the type of injury, or if it's a bigger joint, you can either go sports tape or Leuko tape P. Both work perfectly. Sports tape, perfect. If it's a really bad knee and you need quite a bit more stability, I would then add the Leuko tape, or just use the Leuko tape P instead of the sports tape. So as you can see, 75 is obviously just a little bit bigger. Same roll, just 75mm in size, and it's better for bigger joints because you just cover more surface area, where the 50mm will only use, you can cover less. If it's a really small joint, especially smaller children or younger children, you can use a 50mm because it's a smaller structure, so it helps a bit more for that. So when we do the knee, so what you do to the outside, you do exactly to the inside. It's the same strapping principles. So we're gonna again start with, just check again, clean the surface area, remove any hair when you're strapping it. Make sure what type of injury, there's no swelling, there's no specifically if you play in contact sports, there's always a roasty or something around the knee. So just cover any open wounds or anything like that before you start strapping, because you don't want to strap on top of inflamed or infected skin. When we do the knee strapping, we always want to put the knee in a slight 30-degree flexion. So if you have a spare roll or any little thing, you can just put underneath the heel. That puts the knee into that 30-degree flexion, which is the preferential position, because that's more the athletic position that your knee is in the whole time. Again, we're going to measure 4 fingers below the joint and 4 fingers above the joint, and that's where our anchor straps will be. So more or less 4 fingers below. We'll start with the bottom one. Again, start in the middle there, and we're just going to loosely just go around. Remember, don't use the limb as an anchor, because here we can change. If you really pull hard, I can actually pull the ligament of the knee into a different position, and then we're actually opening certain structures we don't want to open, or joint ligament structures, so we don't want to open that too much. Just apply there, just hold on to your anchor point, just loosely apply, and always hold on to the roll as you apply. Okay, just once around is enough. Okay, and again 4 fingers above. Again, just loosely strapping around. So these inside and outside is more for your collateral ligaments, so the ligaments sitting on the side, and slight bit of a meniscus. If you have meniscus, will also help support there. The ACL strapping we'll show you now. That's more for the ACL. Is a bit of a different technique. Okay, so remember we want to cover, so that's the joint line, more or less. So we want to have, so we're going to do crosses with our rigid in this fashion. So we want to make sure that we're crossing the joint line in the middle there. So we don't want to go too far forward. If you go too far forward, the knee bends, and then you'll see small tears in the strapping. So it's quite important that you go sort of in the middle around the joint there, not too far forward, too far backwards. You can see you're not strapping really around the knee joint. So crossing into the middle of the joint in that position. Okay, so for this one, you don't have to measure out. You can just measure out one piece, start in that position, make sure that you're covering the joint line in that position. So come across and over, pulling nice and firm, and just applying that tension. So it's covering the joint line nicely in that position. Then we'll do another one. So this time coming from the top to the bottom. Just hold, make sure you're holding onto the anchor point. Come aiming for the bottom inside. So this specific one is just for the outside knee. If you have the inside as well, you'll just repeat what you did on the outside on the inside as well. So you can just do it, it just repeats itself. So now again, just the more layers you put over, the more stable the structure will be. So again, 50% overlap. Just apply nice tension. Okay. Okay, so you can see how it's crossing over each other, creating all the structure very nice and strong around it. So again, the amount of stabilizers you put on again depends on the size and the severity of the injury. So the size of you can add, we normally do 3 to 4 of them. 2 for smaller joints is fine, but you can add more. So the more you add, the more stable the joint will be. So this will be the knee. So you'll just keep going like that. Once you're done, you can just then cover the end points. But before we do that, we'll just show you the ACL one. So the reason why it's different from this, so ACL is normally a rotational injury or extension injury. So with strapping, we unfortunately can't prevent rotation. There's no way, maybe in a lesser extent with the lateral stabilizers, but it's very difficult to prevent rotation. However, we can prevent extension of the knee joint. So if they get a hit from the front, like in rugby with the grass cutter tackles, if they hit them quite hard, the knee joint just goes over. So the ACL's function is just to prevent that type of movement. So if you hit the shin or the bone at the bottom quite hard, the knee is forced over, and that just rips the ACL off. So we can prevent extension. So for this one, we will strap around the back. However, you will need a flexible as a cover plaster. Reason why is because we're going to strap at the back of the knee, and the skin is quite soft at the back of the knee, so it can tear quite easily. Also, if you use it quite a lot, it will just tear. So, and if you have a kicker that does the strapping as well, that constant forced flexion can actually rip a bit on the skin. So you want to just cover the back of the knee just to prevent that skin from strapping, because if you, starting of the season, you tear the skin, it's quite a long way to go for the season, so you don't want to cause problems from the beginning. Okay, so for this one, so we're going to strap at the back of the knee. Same principle apply. Okay, good. So we'll just be there. So this is your flexible. You can see it's quite a nice plaster. It's got a fabric back end, so there's no. So the nice thing is, if you're allergic to plaster, you apply this first, because it's got no latex in it, so there's no allergic properties to it. So we're going to apply this just to the back of the knee, just to protect the skin at the back. So just a caution, if you use this in the wind, be careful. It's quite a tricky plaster, because it's got you open it in a split like that. So one piece is off, the other piece is free to do whatever it wants, so it can be a little bit tricky sometimes. So just take care using this. And again, just apply this loosely, just loosely to the skin. You don't want to apply any tension, I'm just applying it. That way. Inside there, and cover as much as surface area as you can, because our crosses are going to cross over the joint line of the knee. Okay. So we're going to again. So the cross is going to be over in that direction. So you can measure and tear. The direction doesn't matter, so you'll just start on the inside there and apply across. So just prevent wrinkles. So it's going to be in that position, and then you're going to apply from the other side exactly the same. And then you can add, again, depending on the severity, add 2 or 3 of them. Just be careful if you're working with kickers. This does prevent, if this is a kicking leg, it does prevent extension, and they normally prefer hyperextension on the leg, or when they kick, the knee hyperextends. So it can affect the kicking style. So if they're coming back and you're applying strapping to it, just make them practice with it a little bit beforehand, because it does affect their kicking. If you look at Andre Pollard, when he came back, he was struggling with the strapping, so eventually he just played without it. They just strengthened him up, so you could play without the strapping. So just be cautious when you're using it, especially with kickers. Okay, cool. So now you can see, so we've applied it. So if he tries to extend the knee, you can see, shouldn't come loose, I should, but you can see how much it's applying tension to the back there. So it's really restricting movement, so it'll prevent extension from happening to the joint. So when you're done, obviously just cover the strapping to prevent that from happening. Again, just loosely apply this. Okay, so that'll just be, so this specific strapping technique or way we strapped it, protecting the ACL from hyperextension or extension in the back, and it's protecting the outside ligaments from any lateral movement. So this will be a partial knee with an ACL strapping. So if you have a full knee, we'll obviously strap the outside and the inside and the backside for full knee, or just if there's no ACL problems, just the outside and the inside. You can, if you want to, cover this. There's no need to cover it. If you have strapped in the correct position, it won't tear. Sometimes you'll see small micro tears on the front part. That just means it's just too far forward. So, but there's also normal knee movement. If you've add enough layers over each other, it also will still be intact. So if there's a slight tear in the front part, it's not going to change much. But some players do prefer you cover it in a figure of 8 pattern. So you'll just do a figure of 8 and cover it, but you'll use the whole roll, so it does waste a bit of strapping, but you can cover it with that, or you can use the tearable EAB, and you can use that as a cover or cover plus, but you don't need to cover that. So that is the knee. So is there any questions regarding the knee?
Yeah, we only got one question here. What is the best way to strap if a rugby player returns from knee injury?
Okay, so that also depends. It depends on the type of injury. But if it's just a normal knee injury, let's say, yeah, I would strap the inside and the outside, just so that the knee is nicely protected from both sides. If it was just an injury on the outside, let's say one of the lateral collateral ligaments or the lateral meniscus, just the outside is sufficient, or just the inside. It purely depends on the type of injury that you had, or if it's an extension injury, just do the back. You don't need to do the sides. So again, it depends on the type of injury that they had.
Last question: if you have a scope done to your knee, do you still strap your knee, or do you know a knee brace or some sort of protective gear area the knee?
What I would maybe do to the knee, you can wear a brace. It is a good point to discuss why we strap and why we brace. Remember, strapping, I can conform to your joint. So it's nice. There's nothing wrong with a brace, but the brace tends to move a bit and it's quite loose. So that's not specific to your joint. So specifically for coming back from a scope, I would use the kinesio tape, Leukotape K. Reason why is they've scraped and scraped around the joint. So you want to just lift off a little bit and create a bit of space and just a bit of therapeutic of nature, just lift off a little bit off the joint. So you want to actually use a Leukotape K just to protect that area, because if you're now going to compress onto the area that they just scraped, it can irritate the joint a little bit. So I would definitely then use Leukotape K just to lift off that area and create a bit of space, and it will support, but Leukotape K will be the best way to strap it.
If using Leukotape K, would you still put the knee in 30 degrees of flexion, or should 90 degrees be fine? Or would it vary among sports?
So Leukotape K, when you strap it, you strap more muscle than joint. So if you're strapping a specific muscle, let's say you're strapping the quad, you would put the knee into 90-degree flexion. Reason why is you want to create tension in the joint or the muscle, then you don't have to create tension on the strapping. So Leukotape K you don't have to do the 30-degree flexion. You normally do full flexion of the knee, but again it depends on the type of what muscle you're doing. So like if it was let's say it was a quad, if it was a quad, ek gaan sit so, ja, moet sit. Sit sommer net so. Ja, sit sommer kyk daai kant toe. If it was a quad, let's say you injured this muscle, so you want to put it in full stretch. You can even put it up like this in full stretch like that, and then I would apply over like that, and as you straighten the muscle, the strapping will create tension, and then it lifts off properly. So with Leukotape K, you want to actually put more tension on than the 30-degree flexion. The 30-degree flexion, it's just your athletic position. So if you strap a knee in that position, because that's your knee is going to be in that position most of the times, and we're strapping the joint, not the muscle. So the joint is one with the rigid strapping is protected, but with Leukotape K, it's more the muscle that's protected. Any other questions?
I think the last one, it's quite a good one. I think, what is the best way to strap the patellar tendon?
Okay, patellar tendon, well, there's various ways. I prefer Leukotape K. Leukotape K will be the best. I'll show you there's different ways that you can strap it. We normally use, let's say, so there's different ways. You can use, if you cut this in advance, just cut this in advance, I-band for the patellar tendon, because it just supports the structure that's acting onto it. So let's say we do the quad muscle. So for that position, we would normally do just a normal I-band running over like that. And then a small piece, I'll do that now. So let's just start with that. So when you use the Leukotape K, you always you measure the length of the joint, and you cut according to the length that you want to use. So we'll just strap from the quad into that position, and we're going to go there. So we want to just lift off that area. Remember, when you cut it around the edges, the reason why, because it's got flat edges when you use it normally. It's got these flat edges like this, so that just sometimes gets caught, and then it lifts the strapping off. So that just prevents that. If you round the edges, prevents that from happening. The backing paper you can see at the back is quite important. You shouldn't touch the glue same as the other strapping, but don't touch the glue too much, because it actually just affects the sticking properties of the plaster. So when you apply it, you cut your piece like that, and then when you start, you just tear into the backing paper like this. So you can still use the plaster in that position. So when you're going to apply, with just no tension on the muscle, we just apply that anchor point. Okay, so we'll just apply that anchor point like that. Then I would, and then just put the knee into full flexion as much as they're comfortable at, and then we would just no or minimal, like 25% or not even 25%, a little bit tension around the knee joint because the tendon sits there. I'm still holding onto the backing paper. Just gently apply and then rub to activate. And then as they straighten out, this plaster will pull a bit tight. So really now it's lifting off in that position. Then you can add to that, just to lift off that patellar tendon a little bit. Remember, just round the edges. Okay, so you'll tear this one in the middle. Hold the sides. Again, so now you're going to create tension with the plaster, about 25%, just over the patellar tendon there, and just apply down. There. Apply down, just rub it, just to make sure it sticks, and then also to activate the glue. So as that releases, it will recoil. So like I said to you, the wavy pattern of the strapping, I'll just show you the wave pattern. If you look at the back, you'll see there's this little wave pattern at the back there. So when we apply tension, you can see the wave almost flattens out. As soon as we release it, that wave returns. And that actually lifts off the skin, the skin there, and creates more space. So if normally a patellar tendon, there's a bit of tendonitis and the tendon tends to be thickened. So as we release it, that'll lift off, creates a bit more space, and then that tendon can move a bit more freely in its joint groove, and it allows for a little bit normal movement around that joint. So I will strap it. There's other techniques, different techniques that we can use as well. There's one where you put a little star pattern. So same size as this one. You put a star pattern over the kneecap, and then it lifts that whole kneecap up. So that whole section will be lifted up. So then it creates that whole space, because remember your tendon starts about there and it runs all the way to the insertion point there. So it just creates a little bit of tension relief from that position. Okay, cool. So the next one we'll go to is the shoulder. Okay, so the shoulder, it's normally instability around the shoulder joint. Excuse me, so it's normally instability around the shoulder joint, so it's either through dislocation, the shoulder joint normally comes out to the front. So that's your most common dislocation, to the front, to the bottom there. Rarely it goes out to the backwards, but it's mostly that it comes out to the front. So when we strap it, we want to strap it into the internal position, because that just pushes the joint back, the socket or the ball of the shoulder joint back into the shoulder joint. Okay, so for this one, we will use the 75 mil. Very unstable shoulders, I would suggest getting the Leuko tape P. It's just stronger, but the sports tape works perfectly. So between the two of them, I would use, mainly for shoulders, I do Leuko tape P, because if they come with a shoulder, it's either unstable or it has dislocated sometimes or anything like that. So I'll definitely use the Leuko tape P. So same principle applies here. So you'll look for the deltoid line. So that's where the deltoid attaches. So just underneath that, I would apply my first base anchor point. Just be careful when you strap it. You are strapping underneath the arm, and there's quite sensitive skin. So be careful when you strap there, especially when taking it off. You can actually rip the skin off there because it's very soft skin. So just gentle tension when you apply this. And again, don't use the limb as an anchor. Use your muscle. Use the strapping. So just gentle application. Okay, so the next one we're going to do, so next one will be over the shoulder. So it sort of covers over the AC joint, so where this vest line is, that's where we're going to cover the next base layer. If the guy is very sweaty, you can use the Fleximal just as the base cover there. so that the main points don't stick onto the skin, but you can also use the Fleximal just to attach that. So we'll just a nice broad one. And again, don't put any tension on this one because it can come off when they start playing, because remember, your shoulder joint is one of the, especially in contact sport, is the one that moves the most, and it's constantly being rubbed and bumped and moved, so it can, take care when attaching this. Okay. So when we do for the stability, we're going to do cross movements over the shoulder joint. So we can, you can see we'll start in the middle and we'll just cross over the front, cross over to the front, and then cross over to the back. So the same for back and front is going to be the same type of movement. So we start at the back there, and I'm just going to cross. So I'm starting from the bottom, moving upwards, because I want to pull this joint into the socket. So from there, create a bit of, just there over the joint line and attach in that position. Same thing in this position. From there, you can apply a bit of tension. There. And then we're just going to build. So from this one, you can actually do the whole shoulder. You can finish it up so that the whole shoulder is nicely covered. Especially with the shoulder, the more you add, the more stable the shoulder is going to get. Don't have to stop at 3 or 4 of them. And remember your 50% even overlaps. Okay, we'll stop there, and then we'll just cover cover both ends. Hopefully have enough. Okay, we'll just don't have enough. We'll just cover it just loosely like that. So you can see when we actually opens up the shoulder, how much that is restricting the movement of the shoulder. So it's actually preventing that shoulder from going forward. And the same for back. It's providing nice stability, and then it also pulls the shoulder joint into the socket. So it really protects the shoulder from both ends. That's basically the main ones with regards of shoulder. You can do AC joint strapping, so that's normally that joint that always gets hurt, specifically in contact sport. It's normally the point that gets contact quite hard. Normally you would just put a protective layer as well over it, so shoulder pad or any spongy type protection. Or what you can do is you'll just create a little star pattern. So just strap both ends, just pull down onto the joint, just so that joint is it's been just pressed down and hold in position, because that's normally a joint that gets injured quite a lot in contact sports, specifically in the beginning of the year, when the shoulders are not yet conditioned to contact. So that's why contact fitness in the beginning is quite important. So you'll just do a few straps like that, just to protect the shoulder into that joint structure. So is there any questions regarding shoulder joints? Nothing. Okay, cool. So the next one we'll do is specifically for the Leuko Tape K. So if there's any, let's say, lymphatic drainage you'll need it, or let's say there's swelling around a certain joint, or any swelling or lymph drainage that you need, it's quite a good technique to have. It's a very effective technique. We've had patients in our practice, they were involved in motor vehicle accidents, and we applied this this technique, and it actually reduced the time that the hematoma was there, reduced it by quite a lot. So it is really effective technique. It really works. It is important to apply it correctly. Specifically when you apply, there's no tension to the strapping. Otherwise, it doesn't work. But this one is a bit more cutting involved. You'll create a little fan shape like this. So you'll cut. You have your base piece, and then you have these little fingers that you cut loose again. So it depends again on how many. So normally we do. It depends on how big you cut. But more, this is a 50 mil, so it's about 4 will be enough. You have your base, and then remember to round the edges, because specifically with this one you'll either use a compression bandage or whatever with it, so it can sometimes just catch on the edges, so it lifts the plaster off. So as soon as you lift it off, it's not effective. We normally put the base layer where the lymph node is, so you want to take the fluid away from the structure to the lymph nodes to help with drainage. So we want to create that little pathway from there. So I think, lees hom maar. So we'll somewhat just do the calf one in that position there. So for the calf, let's say they had a lateral ankle sprain on the outside there. So we'll measure out and cut our little piece. So then you'll just start by tearing each little leg separately off, because you're going to use them, you're going to work with them separately. So specifically for the calf or the ankle, we'll just go to the back of the knee. So take your base point, just keep using the backing paper, and then just apply that to the back of the knee like that. Again, just rub the edges, and then you start with one piece at a time. So just keep touching onto the backing paper, and then we'll just layer it. So obviously we won't be strapping. Layer it over the structure that we want to help with drainage. So you can just layer it. It doesn't matter how you can overlap. If you have more pieces, it doesn't matter how many you have. Depends again on how much swelling there is. We'll just layer the structures. So you just layer them like that. So this will then help to facilitate fluid to the lymph node. Sometimes if there's a bit of a contraindication, if you feel swelling and pain in the back of the knee, just ask them to take it off, because now it's overloaded the system there, so it can just annoy that area. Or if they feel any burning or tingling sensation underneath the strapping, ask them to take it off immediately. This is a latex-free strapping, but some people just have sensitive skin, so they can be a bit annoyed. If they're annoyed, just sometimes check if you haven't applied too much attention to the strapping, because that can also sometimes cause skin irritation if there's too much tension or too much strain onto the joint. So just be careful when applying it. This one, there should be no tension when applying it. Well, with any of the other strapping techniques with using Leuko Tape K, there shouldn't be any irritants around that are on the skin. Is there any other questions? Coming to the end of our.
Yeah, Nico, we've got two on the shoulder. One is regarding impingement, shoulder impingement.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Shoulder impingement. So shoulder impingement is normally because there's less space within the shoulder joint. So you can use Leuko Tape K just to change a bit of biomechanics around the shoulder. So depending on, let's say, so let's say they've got rounded shoulders, so the shoulder is sitting quite in that position. You can actually strap the shoulder that it sits a bit more backwards, Because with impingement, it's normally the space between the acromion and where the supraspinatus runs through is closed. So they can either be structural because of the acromion's shape, or it can be structural because the joint, let's say the shoulder head is rotated forward because of the muscles that are too strong or too weak at the back and too strong in the front. So we can just create a little bit of space in that shoulder joint with Leukotape K. So what it does involve, so you can depend, so normally between 2 or 3 little mini eye bands. So this is an eye band, so it just looks like an eye. So what you do is, so you'll attach this to the front of the shoulder, and then what I tend to do is I just manipulate the joint, try to push the joint as far back as I can, or so I'll just move that joint a little bit there, and I just wrap around with the strapping. So now the strapping is pulling it backwards in that position. Add another one, so I'll just move the joint there, and that'll create a bit of space. You can see the shoulder joint just moves a bit in a different position. So as they lift the arm into the certain position, it'll just create a bit of space for the muscle to move through. So that's quite a nice technique. Or what you can do is you can use an eye band, and from there just strap the shoulder downwards. So if you take the eye band, so from that position, just improve their posture. So from the front, you'll just pull this one down like that. So that'll just open up that whole shoulder joint and the whole shoulder structure. It should just improve their posture so they don't have those slump shoulders that's compressing onto the front. It actually opens up that joint a little bit, and then creates more space. You can also do that with the Leukotape P and the Fleximal. You'll just apply your Fleximal first, and then take your Leukotape P and just strap it over, and then it changes the whole posture of the shoulders nicely, a bit more back, and then creates space into the shoulder joint.
I think it's quite important around the Leukotape K. I think it's a specialized product. And one of the questions is, when will you use the eye band and when will you use the fingers? If you can maybe just elaborate around the Leukotape K and the
the eye band, let's say we'll start with the fingers. The fan shape we'll basically use for drainage. So any swelling or lymph buildup, we will use that exclusively for that. So that's purely a drainage technique, which helps to facilitate fluid away from the joint. So that's why we do the eye band is more for muscular. So any hamstring, quads, calves, bicep, whatever muscular injury, we will use the eye band exclusively. So I would almost say, so fan is for drainage, and then the eye band is for muscular. So to help facilitate the muscle, help with movement around the muscle, decrease tension around the muscle, or just lift off the muscle, then I'll use the eye band, and then the fan or the finger shapes I'll use exclusively for drainage.
Then an interesting question is, when will you add bubble wrap when strapping a shoulder, or if it's necessary?
So personally, I don't like bubble wrap because it's got bubbles and it pops when you hit them. So then it's useless. So, but bubble wrap you can use as a shoulder pad for an AC joint. Just be careful. Don't make a small square when you make them, because it's normal. Just the smaller the square, the smaller the focal point is. So if you do contact sport, it hits quite hard. So then you make a very small point, and that structure is very small. So the impact will be very very hard. So I prefer for any contusion. So like let's say for AC joint, or if you've got a muscle contusion, I would use foam pads. It's just better. It absorbs more. And you can reuse them a little bit more, but it's just better in terms of why. But bubble wrap is exclusively for AC joints I wouldn't use it for contusions on the legs, but it's for an AC joint injury to take the impact off, yes, but I prefer not to use bubble wrap because it, again, like I said, the bubbles pop and you don't get a big enough space. So, and if you make it very broad, the bubbles just pop easier. So I would prefer a foam pad, or if you have old shoulder pads or any old foam type material, it's much more effective than a bubble wrap.
Yeah, I think another good question is hamstring injuries. How would you strap a hamstring injury?
Okay, so hamstring injury can do two ways. You can either use the 75 mil EAB, or the 100 mil works actually better. It's just a bigger bandage. So then you'll do compression. So you'll basically just do a circular type movement around the joint, compress it nice and hard. So not too tight that you cut off circulation, but nice and good compression around the joint. So that just creates that compressive feeling. It pulls everything nice and tight. It creates a bit of warmth for the muscle to move in. So it just helps a little bit with compression. Or what we prefer, what I also use is Leuko tape case. So specifically using an I-band on the hamstring. I think it's not going to be better. I can show you. I'll show you. The knees are now so well strapped, struggling to get on top. So if you, so let's say, we'll just do it over the shorts, but if you, you'll use an I-band like this, so we'll definitely just measure out, let's say, so you start with this technique, you start at the sitting bone, so you'll just feel, that's where your hamstring attaches, so we'll start there. So remember, you've got 3 or 4 actually running like this, so you'll just ask where. So if it's in the belly, it's in the middle. If it's outside, inside. But I just do both sides just to cover my base, because the belly is quite broad, especially if they have big hamstrings. So I'll have my 2 I-bands from that point. I'll just measure out more or less 2 lengths like that. One there, one running to the inside. I will cut them, and then what I'll do is I'll just cut one piece. So I'll have 2 pieces like this, and I'll be in that position. Then to create tension, I don't want to pull on the bandage. I'll just ask them to touch their toes. So they'll go down and then touch their toes. Now they're creating tension in the hamstring. I'll just apply, and it goes from the sitting bone all the way to the insertion point on the outside of the knee there. And I'll do the other side as well. And then as they come up, the bandage will just, as they come up, the bandage will coil it immediately. So now what it creates is, it creates, so hamstring normally tears in the eccentric part of running. So that is when you, when they go out with the knee, trying to extend the knee, that's where the hamstring is. But with this, it'll help sort of with the elastic recoil. It helps to facilitate the muscle, and it just lessens the impact of the eccentric phase of the running. So it'll help a little bit with that. So I would use two I-bands. That's normally my go-to, but if I just want compression, just a bit of support, I would just take my 100 and I'll just start in a circular fashion, covering 50%, a nice and big compression, work my way up, and then just have it nice and tight around the joint. Okay, any other questions? Okay, cool. So this is just, there is videos available regarding the strapping, so please have a look out for the videos. The most important thing regarding strapping is just to practice it. In the beginning you'll be quite slow with it, and it takes time, and you wonder, but the more you play, the more you practice, the better it'll get. Easier you'll get. And remember, there's no one size that fits all. In my practice, we not experiment, but we have to change our techniques quite often. Specifically, I work with track and field athletes. Their shoes they run in is very thin and very low cut. So if you have a thick strapping like we did to now, it's difficult to put their spikes on. So we have to sort of adapt and improvise our strapping to maximize the stability around the joint, but also effectiveness. Because if I have a loose shoe, it's going to be an unstable structure that they're running on. So practice, experiment, see what works best for your athletes, and the more you do it, the better it gets. Just practice and keep doing it, the better you'll get. Cool. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Niku. I think it was a very informative evening for everyone. I think everyone learned a lot of stuff here. And I think, guys, the most important thing is that there's so many conditions. If you're not sure of the condition, please go to your medical practitioner, your doctor, your physio, your chiros, your biokineticist to support you in your needs. I think that's the best way. We can stand here all evening and show different techniques, and every technique is different to a certain condition. From our side, also, if you have any other questions, please go on the Facebook or the Instagram, Leuko Sports. Pop your questions there. We will get back to you on any of the questions. We will also then post the Leuko Sports strapping guide there, so you can use that. There's a lot of information on what we did tonight there. There's a lot of questions. Do we have more of these strapping courses? Yes, we do have face-to-face strapping courses as well. Please, once again, use Leuko Sports for that platform to contact us. And then I think when it comes to the thanks to everyone that joined this evening for us. I really believe it was a great evening for education and knowledge around strapping. Then from our side, Niku, thank you very much. Kagiso Giel is one of our sales reps. Thank you for your modeling. Mary Ann Wilkie, our digital brand manager, that put in a lot of effort in this. And then obviously the guys, without you, IL Films, Dan and his team, thank you very much. I think we couldn't done this without you. Yeah, but yeah, if you need any info on the products, there's a lot of stockists that we have, all leading pharmacies, and then also some of our distributors is also on screen. But yeah, just contact them on Leuko Sports. But have a good evening and enjoy the strapping.
Bye-bye.